Good morning everyone and welcome to this Plan On webinar. Before we start the webinar, I'd like to give you a short introduction in using GoToWebinar. You can call into the webinar by dialing the marked number and entering your access code. If you would like to listen to the webinar through your computer, then you should activate the marked checkbox. During the webinar, you can ask questions by using the Q&A dialog box in GoToWebinar. We'll collect all questions and get back to them at the end of the presentation. So first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name's Paul, and I'll be hosting this webinar today with my colleague Elko. Today's presentation will take around 30 to 40 minutes, and after the webinar, you'll receive a link to the recorded version. So please feel free to view the webinar again afterwards and share it with your colleagues or via social media. If you have any remarks about this webinar or suggestions for future themes, please do not hesitate to contact me at the email address on screen. So let me first introduce Plan On for you. With over 30 years of experience, Plan On delivers IWMS solutions that help companies optimize their real estate and facility management processes. We've over 400 employees that have helped deliver 2,000 implementations worldwide across Europe, North America and Asia. Today, over 3 million users in more than 40 countries rely on Plan On software for their daily business. The world's leading technology research organization, Gartner, has rated Plan On as a leader in their IWMS Magic Quadrant for several years running, stating that Plan On has a dominant international presence and is amongst the largest IWMS vendors and a strong global player. So today's subject is BIM, the key question for facilities management and real estate managers being, what can a BIM contribute to my processes during the maintenance and operation phases? Have the building partners sufficiently taken into account the fact that this model will be in use for the next 40 years? Before we move on to that question, I'll give you a quick overview of the agenda for today. So we'll start by looking at what is BIM. Once we've covered that, we'll look at the question we're most often asked in relation to BIM. We'll identify some country-specific reasons to use a BIM, then look at how BIM plays a role in each stage of the life cycle of your building, with particular emphasis on the maintenance and operation phases. To demonstrate all of this, we'll be using Plan On solution. So to begin, what is BIM? BIM is the abbreviation for Building Information Model. It's also used as an abbreviation for Building Information Modeling, in which the creation of the model plays a more dominant role. And finally, BIM is sometimes used as an abbreviation for Building Information Management, in which the focus lays on the management part of your building's life cycle. All three are used interchangeably, but the main one in the market tends to be the first one, Building Information Model. So for a lot of people, BIM is the 3D representation of your building. In general, that is true, but BIM is much more than just that. Especially in the realization phase, it is often used to express and simulate the sequence in which the construction will be managed. That is the fourth dimension. When costs are embedded in the model, then this is sometimes treated as the fifth dimension. Besides these dimensions, BIM also contains the so-called bill of materials, in which a lot of information can be stored. Think about the series number of an installation, the distributor, and the warranty terms. So when a BIM contains only the 3D representation, despite looking nice, it actually misses the eye of the BIM. It misses the real added value of your BIM. An important question that you have to ask yourself is, for whom is this data meant? In which life cycle do you need the information? And what level of detail is needed in that life cycle? I'll come to that question later on in this webinar. At Plan On, we're often asked, can you work with a BIM? This is a very open question, as open as me asking you, can you travel, for example? Just like the BIM questions, it's necessary to ask more questions to be able to answer this properly. In the context of travel, I would ask, where do you want to go? Whether you want to travel depends on whether you want to go to the next street, city, country, or continent. But it's also important to know if your travel is for business or pleasure, and also what would be your preferred mode of transport, a plane, train, boat, or bus, for example. So in response to the question, can you travel, there are a lot of variables to be considered. Likewise, in response to can plan on work with a BIM, yes we can, but there are a number of questions you would need to consider. So let me guide you through some of these BIM questions. Country-specific reasons to start with BIM. In some countries, it is mandatory to deliver a BIM. So as an end user, you will inevitably be faced with a BIM. In the UK, for example, the government has the Soft Landings programme. That programme dictates that you can only do business with the government or related departments when you deliver a BIM. Until 2016, this is optional, but from 2016, this will become mandatory. So, when you first receive the keys to your building, you're faced with your building, of course, but also with your BIM. Ideally, you should be able to use that BIM in the coming 40 years, for example, and the BIM would contain the data that is relevant to support your processes during that time. That brings me to BIM in the life cycle. There are numerous phases in the life cycle of your building: the design, build, finance, maintenance, and operation phases. Until now, the focus of BIM has typically been on the design, build, and finance phases, which we refer to as the BIM home ground. One of the main starting reasons for creating BIM was to improve collaboration. Rather than standing next to each other and doing our own things, it enables effective working together. Using BIM in this phase also enables early feedback on clashes that arise between construction, mechanical installation, electrotechnical installation, etc. The earlier these clashes can be detected, often the cheaper the solution will be, rather than facing these problems on the building site, which is inevitably more expensive. In this respect, a BIM pays for itself several times over. BIM is also sometimes used to plan the sequence and timing of building. For example, a real-life example we've seen is a video in which carpenters received instructions on how to compose a complex facade. In terms of using a BIM during maintenance and operation phases, where should you focus? At Plan-On, we focus on 5 core areas, including real estate management, space and workplace, maintenance management, integrated services management, and sustainability management. But which of these areas are most relevant for BIM? Initially, BIM can be very useful for real estate, space and workplace, and also maintenance management. But as a secondary phase, BIM can also contribute value to integrated services and sustainability. So let's focus now on BIM in the maintenance and operation stages of a building's life cycle. One of the most important points to note is that BIM is an information management issue. Therefore, we've highlighted it in red. But what exactly does that mean? As you can see, in the design phase, the architect added only a limited amount of data and details to the BIM, because for that phase, that was all that was necessary. In the build phase, the construction manager added additional information to the BIM because it was important to execute his or her processes. And now we come to the longest part of the life cycle, where we have a different information need. At this stage, some information has been deleted, whereas other information has been added to the BIM. The key question to ask here is, what do you want to achieve with your data, and which processes do you want to support with your BIM? In other words, what is my goal, and what data do I need to achieve that? Keeping this in mind will avoid adding unnecessary and overwhelming volumes of data to your BIM for this maintenance and operation phase. A have here two examples that demonstrate what I mean with added data in order to make it usable for the maintenance and operation phases. For space and workplace management, it's useful to add so-called room objects to your model. By the way, a room object is a term that comes from Revit, but also other modeling tools have similar options. These room objects contain data that can and will be used by solutions like Planon to set up space management. If you don't have these objects in your model, it contains only floors, walls, ceilings, etc., but no spaces itself. Another example in the area of space management is space types. In the models, you'll find a description of the space type, for example, office, corridor, toilet, kitchen, etc. Having a code against space types makes them easier to import into solutions like Planon. In the area of maintenance management, you have options to create a long-term maintenance plan out of the bill of material of your BIM. In Planon's solution, the windows and the doors get a field in which the code of the Planon asset library is stored. This is important to provide a simple solution to create a long-term maintenance plan. To demonstrate that, I'll use the following picture. Here you see that when you add these codes of the Planon asset library to your BIM, it is easy to create a long-term maintenance plan, as well as an overview of the expected costs in the coming 40 years. This is the sort of information that can provide real added value for your BIM. And here's an example of how it looks in solutions like Planon. So, for example, many customers might have 99 buildings in 2D AutoCAD format, and now they are suddenly faced with their first 3D BIM model. Our solution enables such customers to bring building number 100 onto the same level as their other 99 buildings by exporting the model per floor to the AutoCAD format, the existing CAD import. In combination with the 2D CAD integrator, all buildings can now be viewed, and this format will also be used in Planon Self-Service as well as in the Planon apps. In this particular example, I'm using Revit as the modeling application, but other modeling tools have the same or similar functionality to export their spaces and floor in AutoCAD format. In the area of 3D BIM, Planon's solution looks like this. As you can see here, a BIM normally consists of one or more aspect models, like the construction model, the mechanical model, and the electrotechnical model. These are often modeled in Revit, but can be in other modeling applications like ArchiCAD, Bentley, and Tekla. It starts with the initial design, and with the first time you use, you add data from the BIM. Planon and similar solutions enable you to publish the data and the views. One of the tools that we will use for that is Autodesk's Navisworks. We want to use this data in Planon, so we will be able to import the bill of materials and, in combination with Navisworks, present you several views of the same model. This is important because real estate managers have a different view on your model than space managers or maintenance managers. In their facility management and real estate processes, they make operational changes, and solutions like Planon enable you to bring these data changes back to the model. This is important because it keeps the model up to date, so if you choose to do a refurbishment project in, say, 5 years, for example, you'll be able to import the latest values of your operational data. Because we believe that you change your geometrical data in your BIM process at the top of the screen and your operational data in your facility management and real estate processes, and the next slide I'll show this in more detail. Planon's solution focuses initially on the two Autodesk products, Revit and Navisworks. In these products, we will offer a kind of add-in which allows you to publish your data in Kobe-like format to a cloud environment. We refer to it as X-Kobe-like because we will extend the Kobe-like format a bit in order to get all data from the model to Planon. The typical Kobe-like format is not rich enough, but is the right standard to exchange BIM data. The advantage here in using a cloud environment is that the modeler can upload the BIM data without the need to have a link or connection with the Planon environment. With Planon Enterprise Talk, Planon is able to import the data in XML format from this cloud environment and store it in the Planon database. In case that you have already imported your spaces via CAD import, this process will add additional data to the property, floors and spaces. Also, direct import of the spaces without CAD import is possible, of course. The second possibility is that you can create your long-term maintenance plan as previously mentioned. And finally, Planon offers a 3D viewer linked to the data in the Planon database. This is currently Navisworks, but in future could change for increased functionality. Here you can also see that your operational data changes are stored in the Planon database, and you can send them back via Planon Talk to the cloud environment and via the add-in to Revit or Navisworks. Finally, let's focus on this BIM FM Connect cloud solution. In this connector, you'll find field mapping options because Planon needs to know which field belongs to each BIM field. Naturally, we conduct multiple checks before we send data to Planon or send data back to the model. And of course, we have the connection to Planon. It is important that we have a modular setup of the solution. The first module is the connector to Revit that enables us to exchange parts of the bill of material with the model. Because of the fact that all BIM models are created with Revit, we have the same option but also with Navisworks. And that enables us to embed aspect models that are created in other modeling applications, as you can see here. And finally, we're working order information to the mobile solution of Autodesk, which is called 360 Field. This will be a one-direction solution, but you'll be able to see your work orders linked to spaces and assets. So this is what you need to know about BIM, demonstrated here in combination with Planon. I hope that it has given you insight and understanding of BIM and how it can be used. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please enter them using the dialog box. So I will just have a quick look here at some of the existing questions we've received. And
okay, this is Ilko de Bruin. One of the questions is this all already available today? As explained before, we have the solution that we import the data into the Planon environment via the cloud. We are currently working on that, and that will be available in the first quarter of 2015. As showed earlier, also in the presentation, the viewer component will be, we will working on that, and that will be available in 2016 in the R16 release. Another question is, will Planon work with all versions of Revit or just 2015? Yeah, at this moment we focus on Revit 2015, and we have to see what the differences are. But the initial development at this moment is on the 2015 version of Revit, indeed. There is another question that says, I don't understand the difference between using Navisworks and Kobe. Can you explain further, please? The reason that we also build an add-in on top of Navisworks is that we want to enable people also to combine models that have been designed in other tools like Archicad, in DDS, in Tekla. Navisworks enables you to combine these models in that application. And by enabling you to exchange data via that application, you also can exchange data from, for example, your mechanical model. The data format that we use to exchange data about the model, so not the geometrical data, but the other data, that is what we do in the COBie Lite format. So I hope that explains it a little bit more. Another question is, what does a 360 view do? Can you see all aspects of the BIM model? 360 field, it's actually called, is an application from Autodesk that enables you to look at your model on an iPad. It's really focused on an iPad, not on other tablets, and it enables you indeed to look at a lot of data. I can't 100% guarantee that you can see all the details of the model, but at least you can see a lot of information about your model. And it's yeah, it's a way they how should I say that? It's a zipped, let's say, format of your model. So that's the reason that it can run on an iPad. Yeah, the next question is, will you provide a shared parameter file for Revit or provide field mappings? Yeah, by default, of course, we will deliver a solution where we will map the fields that are by default available in object types of Revit. And we'll also map them on the most common fields at the plan site. In that way, it's easy to exchange that data. On the other hand, it's not 100% clear what the content of the model is. So in our add-in, we will also provide software to add data to the model in a format that can be understood by the Planon software. And we will make that very easy so that it is yeah, easy to enable your model for using in the Planon environment. Because as said before, it's really an information management issue, and until the moment that you receive the model for your maintenance and operate phase, the focus was really on the realization phase, and also the data formats were useful for the contractor to execute the work, and that doesn't say that it is also the right format to receive into your facility management environment. And for that, we also provide a piece of software in that add-in. There is also a question about Navisworks viewers. Initially, we will use the Navisworks viewer. I have to say that the add-in will work on top of Navisworks Simulate or Navisworks Manager. That is not a free component of Navisworks, but the actual viewing of the model can be done by the simple Navisworks viewer indeed. The real connection between the Planon data and the viewer, that's what we will work on in the R16 release. Another question is, does Planon R16 require Navisworks to be installed to allow the 3D viewer to work? As you maybe know, is that Planon is, especially for the end user, a web. We focus more and more on the web development, and for the end user, the whole user interface is just a web client. In general, a web client and which runs in a browser is not very good in communication with products which are natively installed, like such a Navisworks viewer. So that will mean that we will focus more on a web-enabled viewer in the future. Another question is, does Planon allow you to access data from non-room objects, such as doors and windows? Yes, what we have in mind is that most people find these type of assets interesting to create a long-term maintenance plan for, especially for doors and windows. Whereas for heating installations, they want to keep that as a unique element, because most people don't want to store all the doors and all the windows in Planon. They want to cluster them, and that's also the functionality that we will provide. When you add the right coding, as explained in this presentation, to the model, you can cluster that data for your maintenance plan, but especially for installations and unique assets like beamers, whatever, you want to keep them as a unique element in the Planon structure. And we store also the unique key of the model with that installation. So you can always find and search based on that unique key into your model. There's another question that asks, if we created our model in Revit, the import into Planon would be via Navisworks and not via COBie. We try to explain that we have a solution in which we build an add-in for Revit as well as an add-in for Navisworks. If you have your models all created in Revit, you use the add-in on top of Revit. What we build is that we can export from there the data into the COBie Lite format, and that COBie Lite, that is an XML structured format, that data structure we can import into the Planon database and create assets, spaces, etc. Let me look if we have another question. Is there a plan for Planon to have its own version of a remote viewer asset tool rather than using Autodesk Glue or Field? At this moment, the focus on